By 1941, World War II had expanded beyond anything the world had ever witnessed. Europe was divided between conquered territories and uneasy alliances. Britain remained defiant, while Germany stood dominant across the continent. Yet Adolf Hitler believed the war could not be truly won until the Soviet Union was destroyed. His ambitions now turned east, toward a land vast in size, resources, and population. The coming conflict would redefine the scale of warfare and human suffering. Hitler's hatred of communism and his obsession with racial ideology shaped every aspect of his Eastern strategy. He did not view the coming campaign as a conventional war between states but as a racial and ideological struggle for survival. In his mind, the Soviet Union represented both a political enemy and a racial adversary. Victory in the East was meant to secure Germany's future, provide living space, and eliminate what he believed were inferior peoples. This worldview ensured the war would be fought with unprecedented brutality. Despite the Nazi-Soviet non-aggression pact, both sides had long prepared for confrontation. German forces quietly massed along the Soviet border, stretching from the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea. Intelligence reports warned Moscow of the growing danger, yet disbelief and hesitation delayed decisive action. On June 22, 1941, the illusion of peace shattered. Germany launched Operation Barbarossa, the largest military invasion in human history. Before sunrise, the skies over the Soviet frontier filled with German aircraft. Artillery thundered across thousands of miles of border. Armored divisions surged forward, smashing through border defenses. Soviet units were caught unprepared, many destroyed before they could organize resistance. Entire formations were surrounded and annihilated within days. The scale and speed of the assault stunned the world. The same tactics that had defeated Poland and France were unleashed on an even grander scale. German tanks drove deep into Soviet territory, supported by relentless airstrikes and fast-moving infantry. Communication centers collapsed, supply lines were cut, and entire armies vanished in vast encirclements. German commanders believed they were witnessing the rapid collapse of the Soviet state. The Red Army suffered catastrophic losses in the first weeks. Millions of soldiers were killed, wounded, or captured. Aircraft were destroyed on the ground, and entire regions fell within days. Panic spread across cities and villages as refugees fled eastward. The shock of the invasion threatened to break Soviet resistance before it could fully mobilize. Joseph Stalin initially struggled to respond to the disaster. Reports of defeat flooded into Moscow, while entire armies ceased to exist. For days, he withdrew from public view, stunned by the scale of betrayal and destruction. Yet eventually Stalin reasserted control. He addressed the nation, calling for resistance at all costs and framing the conflict as a patriotic war for survival. As German forces advanced, Soviet authorities implemented scorched earth policies. Crops were burned, factories dismantled, and infrastructure destroyed to deny resources to the enemy. Entire industrial plants were relocated eastward beyond German reach. Though devastating to civilians, these measures preserved the Soviet Union's ability to continue the war. One of Germany's primary objectives was the capture of Leningrad. The city held immense symbolic and strategic value as the birthplace of the Bolshevik Revolution and a major industrial center. German forces advanced rapidly toward it, encircling the city by early autumn. Rather than storming Leningrad, German command chose to starve it into submission. The siege of Leningrad became one of the longest and most devastating in history. Cut off from food, fuel, and supplies, the city faced mass starvation. Civilians endured extreme cold, hunger, and disease. Despite unimaginable suffering, the city refused to surrender. Cultural life continued in defiance, even as thousands died each day. While Leningrad was besieged in the north, German forces pushed toward Moscow in the center. Capturing the Soviet capital was seen as the decisive blow that would collapse Soviet resistance. Operation Typhoon was launched in the autumn, aiming to encircle and destroy Soviet forces defending the capital. Once again, massive Soviet formations were surrounded and destroyed. As German armies advanced, they confronted the vastness of the Soviet Union. Distances were greater than any previous campaign. Supply lines stretched dangerously thin. Fuel, ammunition, and food struggled to keep pace with advancing troops. The German military had planned for a short war and now faced a prolonged campaign in unfamiliar and hostile terrain. By late autumn, temperatures began to drop sharply. Rain turned roads into rivers of mud, halting vehicles and slowing advances. As winter arrived, temperatures plunged far below freezing. German troops, unprepared for extreme cold, suffered frostbite, equipment failures, and exhaustion. Weapons jammed, vehicles froze, and soldiers fought not only the enemy but the environment itself. By November 1941, German forces stood within sight of Moscow's outskirts. Panic spread through the city as government offices prepared evacuation. Defensive lines were hastily constructed, and civilians joined soldiers in preparing the city's defense. The fate of the Soviet Union seemed to hang by a thread. Despite catastrophic losses, the Soviet Union began to recover. Reserves were mobilized from deep within the country. Intelligence confirmed that Japan would not attack from the east, allowing Soviet divisions from Siberia to be redeployed westward. These fresh, well-equipped troops would soon play a decisive role. In December 1941, Soviet forces launched a massive counteroffensive around Moscow. German troops, exhausted and weakened by cold, were pushed back for the first time. The myth of German invincibility was shattered. What had begun as a swift invasion turned into a grinding war of attrition. The Eastern Front was unlike any previous battlefield. It became a war of extermination, marked by mass executions, civilian suffering, and ideological hatred. Entire communities were destroyed. The scale of violence and brutality reached unprecedented levels, shaping the darkest chapter of the war. As the war raged in the East, events elsewhere transformed the global conflict. Japan attacked Pearl Harbor in December 1941, drawing the United States fully into the war. Germany declared war on the United States, ensuring the conflict had become truly worldwide. The war now spanned continents and oceans. Operation Barbarossa had failed to achieve its decisive objective. The Soviet Union had not collapsed. Instead, Germany now faced a prolonged two-front war, one that would stretch its resources and manpower beyond endurance. The balance of the war had begun to shift. The frozen fields before Moscow marked the first major defeat of Hitler's grand campaign. The Soviet Union had survived the onslaught. The war in the East had only just begun, and it would become the bloodiest battlefield in human history.